Okay, today we are going to talk about Brigitte. Let's maybe actually say her name correctly at least once in the video. Brigitte. We're going to talk about Brigitte for a while some games play in the background. These are games that I played earlier. This one was on a Smurf. I've got some on my actual account to show you later if we're talking long enough, which we probably will be, because I do like to repeat myself. Generally, also, what you're going to learn from watching this gameplay is that I'm quite bad at this game. It's going to be like that experience every child has to go through where they learn their parent isn't perfect because, it's just something happens. The typical event is that you learn your dad isn't perfect because one day he goes to the gas station and never finds his way home. You know how it is. So anyway, let's talk about Brigitte. So very first thing to talk about, is she better as an off-tank or an off-support? Because you'll hear conflicting opinions about this. I do think she is slightly better as an off-tank. She can be an off-support, like she does plenty of healing to be a healer, that's fine. The thing is, just like the way it works out with ultimates, is it makes it more sense for Brigitte to be the off-tank, because if she's one of the healers, the other healer has to be a main healer. You can't have Brigitte Zenyatta, right? That's not enough healing. So you have to have, like, Brigitte, Moira, Anna, or Mercy. And that means you don't get to have Sound Barrier or Transcendence on your team, and that's a big deal because not having those ultimates makes you more vulnerable to things like Graviton, Tac Visor, Dragon Blade, you know, some of the scarier ultimates in the game. So I think that she's better as an off-tank because then you can still have the Zenyatta and, you know, the other healer, so then you've got 3 healers on your team, which makes it very hard for the enemy team to do anything, and Brigitte can definitely still be a tank. She's harder to play as a tank than the other tanks are, obviously, but she can do it. That being said, if you're playing Brigitte in competitive and you aren't in a pre-made, you are playing the off-healer. You know, Blizzard put her in the support category, so that's what she is to the majority of the player base. Just like how Symmetra has definitely been a support this entire time. She hasn't been a defense hero, no sir. So I do think she's better as an off-tank, but, you know, you're gonna be playing off-healer. So what's Brigitte really good at? Brigitte's really good at being the fun police, to exactly nobody's surprise. The first thing you gotta do in a game when you're playing Brigitte is determine if the enemy team has divers and flankers, and then you start policing their fun. You just sit with the other support, or the backline in general, you know, but you sit with the other support in the backline, and you make sure you're just, like, watching for those divers and flankers, and you make their life difficult when they jump in. D.Va and Winston, you really fuck up as Brigitte, because they can't easily dodge Shield Bash, which is the thing, right? Genji and Tracer, even Reaper, they can dodge Shield Bash. Winston and D.Va, not so much. And D.Va, you can even, like, interrupt the missiles with Shield Bash and, you know, things like that. So the Winston D.Va, they go in, you stun them, and then you whip shot them away from the person they were trying to kill. Suddenly that person doesn't die anymore, right? It makes it very difficult to play those tanks. People were saying that tanks in general were going to be unplayable with Brigitte, you know. There's been a great many threads, videos, and articles about this. They can all be safely dismissed as hyperbole and or clickbait, because this is not the truth. She does fuck up D.Va and Winston, that much is true. Reinhardt, Orisa, and Zarya are not so bothered by Brigitte. Roadhog, like, you know, you make it difficult for Roadhog to have any fun, but there's a lot of things that make Roadhog difficult to have fun, like D.Va does. Blizzard took away Roadhog's fun, right? So, like, you know, it's not a new development for Roadhog to be sad. He's been sad for a while. But, and also, you work well with those tanks, so if nothing else, it's like break even. People had this nightmare scenario in their heads where, like, the Brigitte's gonna stun the other Reinhardt, and then your Reinhardt's gonna get the free Earth Shatter. That's not gonna happen outside of, like, pre-made situations. Like, the timing is too strict and requires too much coordination for it to really, like, happen in the wild. So all of that was nonsense. People also said Genji and Tracer were going to be unplayable. People have said Genji is going to be unplayable like 3 or 4 times at this point, and it's never been true. Because Genji is this way where he has the ability to outplay the people who counter him, right? Like, I've killed a lot more Winstons and D.Vas than I have Genjis and Tracers, right? They can play around you to an extent, so yeah, it's harder if you're there, obviously, in the same way that, like, having a McCree or Zarya next to the person makes it harder, but, like, they can still play around you. You are in charge of policing their fun, but the Genji and the Tracer are going to be the ones that you have some difficulty with, because you have to actually hit them with your melee range stun. If it's a Tracer, by the way, stun, 1 melee attack, whip shot, kills the Tracer before she has time to recall. So if you stun the Tracer and she doesn't have like any extra health on her and no healing, you just kill the Tracer. So that's cool. But you do have to actually land the stun, which is the hard part. So, but you are in charge of policing their fun. First thing you do, you look, you try and figure out what they got, and you are in charge of looking for that and making sure they have no fun with your, you know, your crowd control, your knockback, and then your armor pack also. The big spike heal basically fully heals a squishy target and overheals with armor as well. If it overheals, it gives them some armor, so that's cool. Yeah, that's basically how you play Brigitte. You sit with your backline and you make life difficult for them. If there's nobody on the enemy team that you really need to police their fun too much, you can just like walk in with your tanks basically as part of the front line and then just disrupt their front line. Like right here, you can see I've seen Lucio. He's trying to have some fun. I know what he wants. He wants to push people off this bridge. I see him coming. I'm like, no, you fuck off. Stop that. Put the fun down. That's what you do. Genji's fun gets really taken away from him this round. You'll see it when it comes up. Then you know, if there's nobody you need to police the fun on, you can just follow your front line in, act as a tank, and then just disrupt their front line and support whoever is on your team, tank-wise. Brigitte, you know, if you've got the archetypical bad tank combos of Roadhog Diva or Roadhog Zarya, you're going to be kind of upset about it. But, you know, life is difficult sometimes. What I do like about Brigitte is that you can sort of dictate the pace of the game a little bit. Because, you know, we've all played the game where the tanks are too afraid to actually walk. Oh, this upset me. Watch this, right? So I throw the armor on her. It goes on Soldier. Even though I pushed the button on Widow. You know, whatever. I was upset about that. Because, you know, we've all played the game where the Reinhardt sits in Hanamura's doorway and just doesn't want to move because he's a pussy, basically. You can actually start walking through the door yourself, and, you know, your shield isn't fantastic, but you can walk through the door and the Reinhardt he'll be like, oh, fuck, I guess we're walking through the door. So you can, like, encourage the tanks to actually walk in, which is not something many heroes can do. So I like that about Brigitte. You can actually try and get some momentum out of your tanks if they are too afraid to actually play tanks. So that's cool. You know, it's very easy to die as Brigitte, especially since she's only got 250 health. She got a 600 health shield, which is largely how you survive in team fights, but she's quite soft, and she's an entirely melee hero. So what a lot of people do is they just start running into the team fight, swinging that flail around, and they get bursted to death. You know, you have to actually have some self-control when you're playing Brigitte, because you are still fairly soft. You can die. A lot of surviving in team fights is through strategic use. Oh, here comes the fun taking. Oh, fun stolen. Is through using your shield to, like, block the DPS. But, like, you're very disruptive in a team fight at the same time. So, like, you know, you just, like, push into, like, the Soldier with your shield and, like, start bullying him. And Soldier can't kill you, really, because the shield's in the way, and you're, like, you, as the off healer, right, are completely occupying one of their DPS's time, while you're still healing ambiently, because Inspire is just happening around you in a very large radius, so you're still contributing to helping your team, while, like, completely occupying another member of their team, which is the very strong thing about Brigitte, is just how disruptive that she is. So, there are quite a few times in the game where you'll feel not super productive when things are, like, neutral. Because if you have to sit with your backline and make sure that, you know, you're taking the flankers' fun away, there are going to be a lot of times where you're just, like, sat with your team, looking at the enemy team and, like, looking around to make sure you aren't getting flanked, right? And this is kind of the same, like, the same is kind of true as Reinhardt, but Reinhardt has, like, shield management and things to do at the same time, so he's occupied in other ways. Brigitte, you are just kind of, like, standing there, looking at the enemy team, trying to hit whip shot to generate some ult charge and proc Inspire, and just kind of waiting for a team fight to happen. Because when a team fight happens, you know, that's fun times. Then you get to go in and start hitting people, right? And then you also have the laborious task of trying to actually get the armor pack on the person you want, which is very difficult to do in a team fight because you're a melee hero, but, you know, whatever. So when things are neutral, you often end up feeling not super productive while you're, like, waiting for something to happen. But there are a few heroes like that. If you're, like, playing defensively as Winston, you know, there's a lot of, like, looking at them menacingly, right? Like Brigitte, you're looking at them menacingly a fair bit of the time. But, you know, that's fine, because then when the team fight happens, that's when you shine in the team fight. You don't bring much to the neutral poking at the enemy team game, but, oh, when the team fight happens, that's where the money is. I'm solo tanking in this game, by the way. We win. Diamond's also a shit show, just so everybody knows. So I'm of the belief that what makes a hero good is how unfair that hero is, right? So, like, Genji is very good because Dragon Blade is a very unfair ultimate, because you can just kill people, basically. More or less by yourself. You can't go in 1v6, but it's like like Dragon Blade by itself is an ultimate that can win a team fight, right? And then Genji himself is applying pressure the whole time. So, like, Genji's unfair because he's generating pressure, and then his ultimate is extremely strong. Pharah is a strong hero because of how much damage she does and how difficult she is to kill, right? She's a very unfair amount of damage from an unfair location, the sky. Things like that, right? Zenyatta is unfair because Discord is very fucking strong. And then Transcendence just nulls out some of the strongest ultimates in the game, right? And can go, like, multiple ultimates. Like, he can go 1 for 2 or 3 even on ultimates, right? You can do this kind of thing also. If you, like, you can block a large area on the self-destruct, but you do have to, like, press right up against the self-destruct to cover a wide area, so it's kind of scary. But you can do things like that as Brigitte still. So what's strong about Brigitte is basically how disruptive she is in a team fight. Like, Rally itself is cool. Rally can enable some extremely long team fights to happen. Rally's not a very intuitive to use ultimate, so let's kind of talk about that, actually. The ideal time to use Rally would be, like, before a team fight happens, and, like, enough before that you can cap out the armor on your team, or close to, then have the team fight, and then the rest of the ultimate, you get to benefit from the armor regen in combat as well, but you get to engage with this buffer of armor. The thing is, that's a very difficult timing to get correct, right? Because you have to read the match very well to actually do that. If you're, like, the attacking team and you're in a pre-made, it's easy to, like, arrange that with your team because the attacking team is the one with the initiative, but it's hard to do that. So instead, the two ways that I use Inspire are I just use it way in advance of the team fight to build up armor for the engage, so this is typically what happens on attack. And then you just get to go in with 150 extra armor, soon to be an extra 100 armor, because, you know, they're nerfing Brigitte. The PTR, you know, Brigitte's been playable for 62 days, but, you know, it wasn't until she actually hit competitive that people went, okay, she needs a nerf. you know, if you needed any further confirmation, the PTR is a waste of space. So I'll use it either way in advance of the team fight starting to engage with this extra buffer of armor, so like a sound barrier type effect, basically. Or you just use it in the team fight to basically regenerate a lot of health and armor. Because basically then you've just got Inspire going twice if Rally is going at the same time, but you're also regenerating armor. Look at this, just stun him. Oh, doesn't get to kill Widow anymore. Cool. You're also regenerating armor, as well as regenerating health, and armor is better than health, so if you use it like that, Rally can enable some extremely long team fights, especially if you're the off tank, because then you got the two other healers as well. I've played a game on Route 66 where a team fight legitimately lasted 3.5 minutes. Because we had me as the off tank and 2 healers, and the enemy team had Brigitte as the off tank and 2 healers. So the fight took an extremely long time. Got to ult like 3 or 4 times during the team fight. It was really cool. So that's how you, like, use Rally, basically. It's not the most intuitive to use ultimate in the entire game. I also think Brigitte is better than Rally, right? Like Dragon Blade is better than Genji, you know? There's usually the ultimate is stronger than the hero. I think Brigitte is better than Rally, you know, like how Pharah is better than Barrage, usually. Because the thing that's really strong about Brigitte is just how disruptive she is during a team fight, because you just stun someone every 5 seconds, and you're knocking people away, you're having a great time, right? The whip shot is one of those abilities that can save the enemy team, so you do have to be careful with that one, but you do just, like, disrupt people during the team fight. You don't want to just stun people randomly, because you're not just trying to stun someone for the sake of stunning them. That can be strong, just stunning somebody every 5 seconds, and, like, you do want to stun someone as often as possible, because that's the unfair thing about Brigitte, how often she can use her crowd control. But you want to stun the actually most impactful person at the time, which is typically gonna be the support, if you can get to them, or whoever's using their ultimate. Otherwise, it's probably going to be the tank, because if you just, like, stun the Reinhardt every 5 seconds, he doesn't get to use his shield during that time, and, like, that, suddenly he's vulnerable during that time. You can, like, try and kill the Reinhardt. Well, you won't, like, kill him during the stun duration, but you can basically kill him during the stun duration if the entire team, like, gets on him while he's stunned. Look what a greedy bitch I am. I'm gonna get away with this as well. There's no justice in the world. So you do want to actually try and stun the most impactful person at the time. Like, if you're just stunning, like, the zero-charge Zarya during the team fight over and over again, that's not as impactful as you stunning, like, the other tank, or the DPS, or something like that, you know. If you just stun the other Brigitte, that's not necessarily that impactful either, because there's no guarantee you killed Brigitte. You know, you actually need help to do that. Often it'll be like, if you can, look, here we're going to block for McCree, because the shield is actually big enough to do this. By the way, the shield is just big enough to block for a Bastion as well, so if you're doing, like, a pirate ship, you can stand in front of the Bastion and block for the Bastion as Brigitte, so that's cool. As well as, you know, stopping, like, Tracer trying to kill him and things like that. So you know, you're trying to stun the most impactful people possible, and you're trying to, like, push people away, so, like, if they got, like, a Zarya on somebody, Winston's on someone during the team fight, your job is to, like, push that person away from the team fight as frequently as possible, because then they have to spend time re-engaging, not actually doing anything, and you're just trying to disrupt people. And then while you're trying to while you're in the team fight, you are a melee hero, and you're quite soft, and people are going to try and focus you. People will focus you quite hard as Baguette, so you have to, like, use your shield to survive during the team fight. There's a lot of, similarly to how one would play Reinhardt, where you melee attack, and as it makes contact, you put the shield up. There's a lot of that with Brigitte. There's a lot of putting the shield up just to, like, block damage, and then, like, take it down to hit them again. You know, like, block, Roadhog shot or Reaper shot, then hit him, then put it back up again to block, and then hit him again, you know? And then you're regenerating behind the shield at the same time. And it's difficult for them to actually kill you past the shield, right? Like, they have to get around the shield or actually stun you. So if you're fighting somebody, the way you win a lot of duels, if you can't just, like, burst the person to death, is you hit them, then they start doing some damage to you, you hold the shield up, you regenerate behind the shield a little bit, you wait for your cooldowns to come off again, and then you start hitting them again. And then during the team fight, you want to, like, try and keep an eye on where the thing most threatening to you is, and block that when it's about to be threatening to. Like, you see soldiers shooting at you, as soon as you see the Helix rockets coming, that's when you block the soldier, even though you were previously hitting this person, suddenly you want to block that, because that's scary. So you have to actually, like, the way you survive in team fights is using your shield. Because the shield is not really big enough to consistently block for your team, you can basically just use it as a personal shield, and that's perfectly fine. And it's how you survive in team fights. I encourage you to think of the shield as basically being 600 extra hit points for you. That's obviously not exactly how it works, but think of the shield as, like, your extra hit points. So, like, that's how you survive in team fights, by using your shield. Because a lot of Bridges, they just go in and start hitting people, but then they get killed because they don't actually block any damage coming at them, and they just kind of take it on the chin. You can kind of do that if you've got Inspire going and Rally at the same time, but, you know, you're going to have to be blocking. You're going to have to be blocking with the shield now and then to actually survive in a team fight as Brigitte. That's how it is. So, now we've talked about all of that. So, who counters Brigitte? There are a few heroes that, like, really counter Brigitte, right? So, Pharah, obviously, there's not much you can do about Pharah. You can try and whip shot her, and that's about it. I've killed a fair few Pharahs. It makes a very satisfying tunk when it kills them, but it's not exactly consistent. Junkrat really fucks you up. McCree fucks you up because, you know, flashbang past the shield, shoot you in the head, you're basically dead at that point. That kind of thing. Those are like the really strong counters to Brigitte. People were saying Mei and Doomfist would be very strong counters to Brigitte. I don't find that to be true. Because Mei... It's one of those things where, like, you'll never kill the Mei, really, but the Mei will never kill you, barring outside interference, right? And, you know, if you, the off-healer, are completely occupying one of their DPS while still healing people because Inspire is going, like, you're being more impactful than Mei, right? So it's not, you know, Mei is not a big deal. Doomfist, yeah, he can punch you into a wall and he can kill you, but that's not exactly a Brigitte-specific issue, and we don't really consider Doomfist as a counter to, like, Mercy, do we? Even though he can do the same thing. And, you know, if you stun the Doomfist out of Rocket Punch and all that, like, he's fucked. It's just, it's very more easy for you to disrupt Doomfist than it is for Doomfist to kill you. And then there's other components that make it difficult for Doomfist, like the fact he's playing Doomfist, right? So I haven't found that to be true. Sombra does fuck up Brigitte. Brigitte's one of those heroes that's very upset to be hacked. She's not the saddest hero in the world to get hacked, but she is very sad to be hacked, so Sombra as well is a good one. Those are kind of like the really hard counters to Brigitte. Like, the other, I've not really had much issue with other heroes. Those are the one, snipers as well, because, you know, if you're a short-range hero with no vertical mobility, you are typically going to have trouble with snipers. That's not a Brigitte-specific thing either, really, but the snipers, yeah, they'll make it difficult for you. But, like, Junkrat, Sombra, Pharah, and McCree are the ones that'll, like, really give you trouble. I don't think... It's not, like, to the degree where you necessarily have to change off of Brigitte, because you are still very disruptive during the team fight, really. Like, you can still be disrupting so many other parts of the enemy team that I don't think you necessarily have to change off of Brigitte because you see those people. But if it starts getting, like... Pharah, Junkrat, McCree are all on the same team, then maybe at that point you just change off Brigitte, right? Like, at that point it's getting obnoxious, obviously. But those are, like, the only real counters for Brigitte. I do think Brigitte's made Ana a lot better as well, because obviously Ana's principal issue is that she hates being dove on. And Brigitte is really good at keeping people alive when they get dove on. So suddenly Brigitte makes Ana a lot better. Ana is also quite good against Brigitte because the anti-grenade, you know, the bio-grenade is as strong as it's always been. But suddenly Brigitte can't use her spike heal, right? Like that suddenly, and she can't even, it doesn't even apply the armor because of the anti-heal or anything, right? Rally does still work through the bio-grenade, but Inspire obviously doesn't work, and the spike heal on armor pack doesn't work either, so that disrupts Brigitte. Brigitte also doesn't particularly care to be crowd controlled that much, so the sleep is very disruptive to Brigitte as well. So Ana works quite well with and against Brigitte, and I think, you know, making a dive hero suddenly being a lot harder to play definitely benefits Ana. Also, because Pharah is more likely to be picked because you're picking Brigitte, Ana's good against Pharah. Look at that, and this is how metagames develop, right? Suddenly, right, if suddenly people are picking a lot of Pharah to counter Brigitte, suddenly Ana becomes a lot more appealing to pick because Ana is one of the more threatening people to a Pharah. So it's Ana's a lot better now. I think Ana's honestly probably the main healer I like playing with the most as Brigitte as well, just because the bio grenade plus Inspire is a fucking lot of healing, and then, you know, the healing buff is on a tank and you use armor pack on them, the tank like fully heals suddenly, so that's very strong. Brigitte herself is also a decent nano boost target, which Ana is in dire need of having more good nano boost targets, so I think Ana works very well with Brigitte, actually. Moira obviously works well with Brigitte. Moira works well with basically everyone, as does Mercy, you know. Shockingly, neither of them don't work well with Brigitte. They do work well with Brigitte, because they work well with basically everyone. Brigitte is one of those heroes as well that fits into most any team composition. Like, you can't solo heal as Brigitte, really, like, that's not feasible. If the other person is picking an off healer as well and they're really stubborn about it, you should pick a main healer still, like, that's true. But she kind of fits into most any team composition. The one she struggles with the most is if she's in a dive comp. She works well against a dive comp. She does not work well with a dive comp, really. Because Brigitte herself is quite slow, and she has no vertical mobility, so she doesn't really work very well with a dive comp. She can't keep up, really. She can throw the armor pack on people in the fight and, like, you know, yeah, if she gets up to them, she's very disruptive, but she's kind of too slow for a dive comp, so she doesn't work very well with them, but she does work well in basically any other team composition. If you were playing a dive comp on a map that doesn't necessarily have a lot of vertical mobility to it, she can still kind of keep up. Like King's Row, if you're attacking, you're running a dive comp, there's not a lot of contesting the high ground on King's Row, because there isn't a lot of high ground to contest, so Brigitte can, like, keep up on that regard, but typically she'll struggle to keep up with a dive comp. Other than that, she works well in most any team composition. And she's versatile as well, because you can be up there as part of the front line, and you can be sitting back guarding the back line. So she's a very versatile hero. She's very good. I think she's one of the best heroes in the game right now, actually. Just because she does something very unique for Overwatch, right? She is a consistent form of crowd control, which we don't have very many of. It's hard to find hard crowd control in this game in general, and Brigitte has very easy access to hard crowd control, so she feels like a disruptor role, which we've not really had up until this point. You could say Sombra or Mei, but, like, Brigitte is far more disruptive than Sombra and Mei are, just because of how easy it is to be disruptive on Brigitte compared to the other heroes, basically. She's very strong. I have been playing a lot of Brigitte, and I very highly recommend playing her, because she's really, really good. If you've previously played tanks, you'll find it quite easy to start playing Brigitte. If you played another support and you're trying to pick up Brigitte, you'll probably find that to be a difficult transition, because she doesn't play like any other support in the game, really. Like, the closest is, like, Lucio, but, like, they're still, like, miles apart from each other, right? So if you previously played a tank and you're trying to play Brigitte, then, bait out the flashbang. Oh, I'm so good at this game occasionally. If you played a tank, Brigitte's quite easy to pick up. If you play, particularly Reinhardt, quite a few of Reinhardt's mechanics carry over to Brigitte. So, shockingly enough, like the melee shield up thing like that, and, like, trying to block for your teammates. Like, you can do it as Brigitte, it's just harder because your shield is smaller. But you can definitely do that. But if you played a support, that's a more difficult transition, probably. Probably the most difficult aspect of playing Brigitte is just, like, trying to keep aware during a team fight, because during the team fight you need to actually be, like, identifying who is most threatening and most important to stun and knock back, and also you have to be aware of who needs your armor pack, and then you have to actually be able to pick out the person and get the armor pack on them, right? Which is difficult to do. I probably hit the wrong target with armor pack like 40% of the time when I use the ability. Because I'm in the middle of the team fight, and suddenly I have to pick out, like, the Mercy, who's all the way on the edge of the team fight, so I have to aim through, like, Roadhog and Reinhardt and the DPS that's bouncing around, and then, oh fuck, Genji dashes past right as I push E. Oh god. It's just like the problem Anna used to have, like, when we saw Anna a lot. The Boostio issue. Yeah, Brigitte kind of has that issue as well, as it turns out. So, she's one of those heroes that's quite simple to play in, like, practical terms, because it is just, like, disrupt people, protect backline, things like that. But the difficulty comes in with, being aware, like, being very aware of the team fight. She's, like, the biggest skill with playing Brigitte is, like, awareness, because you need to know who you're trying to protect, you need to know who you're trying to disrupt, you need to be keeping aware of, like, how dangerous what you're doing is, because she's a hero that's very easy to get carried away with and start trying and, like, basically kill yourself on the enemy team with, so you have to be aware of, like, what you're doing, and what the enemy team are doing, and what your teammates are doing, who's in trouble, who's being threatened, who's very threatening, who's threatening me, who do I need to be threatening. There's a lot of decision-making and game sense that goes into playing Brigitte, when, like, in practical terms, sounds quite easy to play. When you're actually in the middle of the melee, like, trying to actually play the game, it ends up being more difficult than it sounds. I've particularly in the Discord, I've seen a lot of people saying that, like, they're basically very bad at Brigitte, and I can understand that, because especially, like, if you were a support player and you want to play Brigitte now. That was actually me I didn't do that right now. That was me at the time. That's how upset I was about that one. It's a very different change of pace compared to the other supports. So I can understand the difficulty in picking her up, just because she's deceptively difficult, right? I've seen a lot of people who are very bad at Brigitte, and it's basically just because they wade into the team fight just left-clicking people, and they aren't really thinking any more deeply about it. There's a lot of game sense and decision-making that go into it. So I think I've said basically everything I can say about Brigitte right now without repeating myself for another hour, so we'll call it good right there. So thank you very much for watching. If you did, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm more than happy to answer. If you have any questions, I'm about to repeat what I said. I'm very good at that. If you haven't already, you can join our Discord and ask questions more directly and have a conversation about them, or just shitpost with us. And I hope you found the video helpful.